Hi everyone. Today we're going to be talking about the adrenal medulla, which I worked on with my partner Ellie, and we're going to be talking about the importance and function of it, which it has in the body.
So, the adrenal medulla is a small portion of the adrenal gland, which is going to be located on the superior part of each of the two kidneys found within the human body. It is found in the innermost center of the adrenal gland, and the cells of the adrenal medulla are going to release two hormones known as epinephrine and norepinephrine, which are going to be involved in the body's fight or flight response.
Referring to the anatomy of the gland, the medulla is located centrally in the gland, surrounded by four outer layers, all encapsulated in the adrenal cortex. Cells are irregularly shaped and surrounded by many blood vessels to aid in quick release of the hormones and disperse them evenly throughout the body. The adrenal medullary cells are modified postganglionic neuron and preganglionic autonomic nerve fibers. What the cells are lacking that doesn't classify them for nerve cells are the axons and dendrites, which plays a role into their effect for their central nervous system, which we will discuss later. Additionally, the principal site for conversion of the amino acid tyrosine into the two primarily released hormones is also done in the adrenal medulla.
Okay, so going into the structure of the hormone, epinephrine and norepinephrine are classified as catecholamines, which is due to the presence of a catechol group. So basically, a catechol group is a benzene ring with two hydroxyl groups attached in adjacent positions, and this you can see in the two images on the right side of the screen. Epinephrine and norepinephrine, although they are somewhat similar in function, they do differ in their structure at the amine site. So in epinephrine, we're going to see that it contains a methyl group, whereas in norepinephrine, it's going to contain a hydrogen. And this addition of the hydrogen versus a methyl group will allow for norepinephrine to act as a neurotransmitter and a hormone. In relation to epinephrine, however, it will show more activity as a neurotransmitter than a hormone. And these differences in structure induce different function. So norepinephrine is going to bind to alpha receptors, while epinephrine is going to bind to both alpha and beta receptors. And in a few more slides, we will go into the differences between the alpha and beta receptors. So during the production of these hormones, we're going to see that epinephrine accounts for a larger production, making up for 85% of the released catecholamines, while norepinephrine is only going to compose for 15% of that.
Now we are going to talk about production of these hormones. Production of these hormones takes place in the adrenal medulla, as mentioned earlier, primarily in chromaffin cells. Tyrosine, as seen in the picture in your upper right-hand corner, is the primary amino acid in which these hormones are derived from. In the first step, tyrosine is hydroxylated into L-DOPA by an enzyme known as tyrosine hydroxylase. L-DOPA, the second picture you can see, is then decarboxylated to dopamine. In the third step, a secondary hydroxylation yields norepinephrine, which is one of our target molecules that we are looking for. To get to epinephrine, an enzyme found within the chromaffin cells known as phenylethanolamine N-methyltransferase then methylates norepinephrine amino group to produce epinephrine.
Okay, so going into the function of the hormone epinephrine, as stated before, these hormones can produce various responses depending on the receptor in the tissue in which it occurs. So alpha receptors are going to be found in arteries, and beta receptors are going to be found only in the heart, lungs, and arteries of the skeletal muscles. Epinephrine, also called adrenaline, is going to function to increase cardiac output and help to raise glucose levels in the blood. And this is going to be a physiological characteristic that is going to be released during acute stress. In the heart, it can increase the rate and force of contraction, which will then increase the output of blood and raising the blood pressure. In the liver, epinephrine stimulates the breakdown of glycogen to glucose, and that's going to increase in the blood glucose level. And it also helps to produce higher levels of circulating fatty acids. So these extra amounts that are produced of glucose and fatty acids are going to be used by the body as fuel in times of stress or danger when increased exertion is required. These physiological actions that are produced by epinephrine are then going to be terminated by metabolic breakdowns of catechol O-methyltransferase or monoamine oxidase. So going into the mechanism of action for epinephrine, epinephrine is going to bind to liver and muscle cells at specific receptors on the outside surface of the cell membrane. So these are going to be the beta receptors. Binding to these receptors is then going to activate a series of enzymatic reactions inside the cell, and those enzymatic reactions are going to produce large amounts of cyclic AMP. Now, cyclic AMP is going to act as a second messenger, and it's going to transmit epinephrine's hormonal signal through the cell. And then once cyclic AMP does that, it's going to activate a cascade of enzymes or kinases, and they're basically going to place a phosphate group at specific sites on either proteins or enzymes. And this addition is going to result in the activation of glycogen phosphorylase. Basically, glycogen phosphorylase is an enzyme that breaks down glycogen into its glucose units. So that's going to release glucose into the bloodstream. And then the physiological actions are terminated by the reuptake into that neuron that released it, or by breaking it down into inactive metabolites by COMT.
As a hormone, norepinephrine functions very similarly to epinephrine. However, it also functions as a neurotransmitter in the body. As a hormone, the main function of norepinephrine is to bind to alpha cells located on the blood vessel, which will thus increase blood pressure. As a neurotransmitter, it serves as a molecule that will transmit a signal between nerve cells, crossing what is known as the gap junction, from one axon to the dendrite of another cell. This occurs when an electrical impulse travels across the nerve, forcing this action to occur. This picture here depicts vasoconstriction. On the left, we have a dilated artery prior to norepinephrine binding to the alpha receptors located on the blood vessel wall. From left to right, once norepinephrine binds to these receptors, we can see the thickening of the blood vessel walls. As the blood vessel walls thicken, it is seen that the interior portion of the blood vessel shrinks. When this shrinks, the blood pressure of the individual will thus increase due to the smaller amount of space for blood to flow through. This picture here depicts the second mechanism of action for norepinephrine, in that it acts as a neurotransmitter. First, norepinephrine binds to an androgenic receptor on the effector cell, which can be seen by number 4. Shortly after norepinephrine unbinds to the receptor, it will diffuse away through the synapse, and the impulse will no longer be transmitted from one cell to the next, which is number 5. In numbers 6 and 7, norepinephrine is reuptaken by the synaptic cleft and is stored away. If there is too much norepinephrine present, it will be metabolized by monoamine oxidase, or MAO. The main disease found in the adrenal medulla is pheochromocytomas, a neoplasm or tumor that is found to grow on or in the adrenal gland that is caused from overproduction and release of these catecholamines. The growth of this tumor will cause various effects in the body, as it will cause the adrenal medulla to function abnormally. Hypertension is seen, a very fast pulse, heart will feel as if it's pounding through your chest, and bad headaches will occur due to this. In the picture on the right, we can see a case of pheochromocytomas. On the left-hand side of the picture, we can see a normal kidney with a normal adrenal gland located just on the superior portion. On the right-hand side, we can see an abnormal case in which there is a neoplasm located on the top of the kidney and just to the left of the adrenal gland.
Okay, so treatment for hypertension is usually dealt with alpha adrenergic antagonist therapy. Now, if this is not completely controlled with the alpha receptor, then a beta receptor blockade will be introduced. And if either of these therapies do not work, the final option would be complete surgery for the removal of the neoplasm to stop the continued release of the catecholamines. And if this tumor is not removed, then the overproduction of these hormones will continue, and it can have a life-threatening effect on the body, for example, a heart attack. Thank you guys for listening, and we hope you enjoyed our presentation.